Okay, I think it started. It didn't give me an audible warning, but yeah. So anyone who's tuning into this, this is just a Plenty office hours. Ben and I are just talking about websites and Plentico
Mhm.
in particular, and just kind
Mhm.
of talking shop. So Ben, you had some questions. I had some things to share too, but like I would love to start with
Oh,
your
okay.
questions, and we can go from there.
Okay. It sort of came up because I noticed but on I think a recent update to the Plenty doc site that
Mhm.
you put, around managing a Plenty version in your build step,
Okay.
or the workflow. Um, you could probably go to that page because I think you updated it and said, well, it's probably a good idea to manage a version number
Yeah.
in that build so that you can sort of keep a check and be slightly behind the actual current.
Yep.
And it probably makes sense. And I was thinking, oh yeah, I haven't done that to any of my sites, and I'm thinking, especially the ones that have been just put, like gone live sort of recently, that would be probably a good idea.
Yep.
Especially when the client is saving to that latest version
Yes.
that could just break. You don't really know, because like you said, that you're constantly making, well, API changes and stuff. So
Yeah.
and that's, yeah, so it's probably a wise thing.
Yep.
So I thought I'd do that. But what I guess and I saw, you've got a template, and that's really nice. Like
Mhm.
it's quite clear how you can do it. But then I was thinking, how do I manage the local side of it when I'm building and testing?
Yeah.
I've just got Plenty as the binary file in my file path, and I'm just running the
Sure.
latest version.
Mhm.
I'm thinking, how would I go about managing uh, that in terms locally, and testing a version that's not the latest locally? Have you set up something like that?
So this is a great question, and this is something that's been on my mind. That I have a vision for how this will work in the future. It's not how it works now. So right now, are you installing the Plenty binary locally just by downloading it, or using like Snap or Homebrew or anything like that to install it?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's Homebrew.
So
Yeah,
Homebrew, you can specify specific versions. So what you could do is
versions.
you could say, like, say you have two different sites, and one has an older version of Plenty and one has a newer version. You could keep installing the particular version to match your site if you wanted to do that. So you could, for one site, you could install an older
Mhm.
version with Homebrew, and then you could upgrade it for the other site as you work locally. That's a little bit of a pain because you're constantly changing your
You're
version.
constantly changing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's where that's a little bit annoying. Like you said, I do recommend locking your version
Mm,
in your production site. So for CI, because like you said,
mm.
anytime someone makes a change, it's going to go and pull that version. Now, ideally, if something's really wrong, it will break the build and nothing will get deployed. But
That's right. Yes,
the
yes.
same thing that happens, though, your client might be
Well, they wouldn't.
confused why the changes aren't
It's not
reflecting, right? Because
reflecting. Yeah.
yeah, so I definitely recommend locking it. And then what I would do is locally, I would test with the newer versions and say, okay, does this work? Like, what are we on now? Like 7.3, seven
Seven,
four? I can't
seven.
something like that.
Yeah.
I would test
Mm.
locally with that new version, and if that site still builds, then I might update my CI to reflect that, so I know that I'm comfortable with that newest version and keep updating that way.
Version.
It's just a little bit more. You're being a little more conscious with it versus kind of saying whatever the new version is, hopefully it works. Now,
Mm.
my vision for the future with this, Ben, is I haven't figured out exactly how I want to do it. I think I'm going to make a separate project, and I'm planning on naming it something like PVM for Plenty Version Manager. And if you're familiar with like
I
Ruby on
see.
Rails or those other frameworks, so Ruby has like a Ruby version manager. There's lots of languages have their own version manager sometimes.
Just okay.
And so Node.js has one too, NVM, Node Version Manager. So
Okay.
so basically, the way I plan on this working is I could build it into Plenty itself. I thought about that, and then I think I don't want to do that because what I think I want the version manager to do is be a thing that manages many of the different binaries. So you could have lots of different versions of Plenty installed on
Uh,
your computer, and it will just manage which version. And then the ultimate way that this works is instead of hitting Plenty directly yourself, you'd probably download PVM, and you'd be like PVM new site, PVM serve. So you just do Plenty commands, but you'd start with your Plenty
P.
version manager.
Manager.
And then what
I see.
that would do, ultimately, I think what's going to happen is when you create a new site with whatever version you're creating it with, we'll put it in the config what version of Plenti you're on. So if you created the site with 07.3, we'll put it in config that you use 0.7.3, and then every time that you start up the site with your Plenti version manager, it's going to read that config and it'll go and find that specific version of Plenti on your computer. And that way you don't really even have to think about these things that much. You can just kind of say, okay, I'm going to start a Plenti. It's going to find the right version on my computer. If it doesn't exist, it will download it, and then it'll manage that version specifically. And then if you update it, you'll update it in the config, and then Plenti version manager will use that newest version. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. So so that's local, and then so that it pushes, you push up to the remote that version.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of, so that's locked into that workflow. Is that what you're saying with the version manager? So that it's sort of end to end. It's sort of local to remote, or
well, it's mostly local. So right now it'd be mostly local. So
I see.
For remote, you could do it with remote, but so for remote for now, everybody does it differently, right? So like GitLab has a .gitlab -ci.yaml file, and GitHub has a different one. It has like a .github then /workflows folder. So they work kind of differently, and like basically CI, the continuous integration looks to different instruction sets. So you still have to kind of set Plenti specific versions in those things for the moment.
In those,
Now, if I ever, and I don't know if we'll ever get there because there's a lot of improvements I want to do to the Plenti framework in general, but if I ever get to the point where we build like a hosted solution that people could pay us to host their sites, I would have that read off the Plenti configuration file itself, so you don't have to even worry about those things. It would just automatically work, and you wouldn't have to worry about those other things. But if you want to use them on different platforms, and you kind of have to use their conventions because we don't have control over it.
Yes, I see. Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, and so that would just mean that, okay, so you say you have your the version manager locally, which would just fix that sort of the local issue. But then, of course, in that config, you would still need to just, still manage that version. But I guess you could just look at what version you're on that you are managing, and then you're okay, just match it or something.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of in two places at that point, right? It's in your Plenti file, which is managing your local, and then it's in your CI build. So you'd match those. And really, the real advantage of this PVM concept that I'm talking about is that you could have multiple versions. Because you might have 50 sites at one point, right? And they all have different versions. Managing that's going to be a pain. But if you had PVM, you could just basically could do the exact version for those sites, and you could have 50 different versions of Plenti on your system.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
that's my plan. Good. I want to build that tool at some point. I haven't started it, but it shouldn't be. I don't think it's gonna be overly difficult, to be honest. It's just something I have to do.
Yeah, I see.
And just one last thing on that is the reason I wanted to keep it separate from. I'm thinking I'll keep it separate from the main project because you could actually build this into Plenti itself, right? But I'm worried that now it's like it might just be more things that potentially could break, and it might bloat what Plenti is itself. And I figure for people who want to have a very slimmed down Plenti version or have it on CI, that should stay small, and this should just be another tool. And so that's my current thinking, is it'll probably be a separate tool, but
definitely
it is a little bit redundant in certain ways, I guess.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. And so what? Is your like sort of, not timeline, but what is your like schedule of to-dos on with Plenti?
So right now I'm in the middle of I have my editor open like halfway through officially releasing the Git-T integration. So right now GitLab is the only supported like backend, but that's the hope, is that we have more backends. So Git-T is, I think, a good second bet because it's a really easy project to self-host, and it's really powerful. So we're using it for a couple of our sites. It allows us to manage lots of users without additional expense. So GitLab gives you 5 free users, but after that, the pricing gets quite expensive quite fast. So so for us, we have a lot of sites with dozens of content editors, and so it was just going to be prohibitively expensive on GitLab. So we decided, we could host our own GitLab, but that's kind of challenging to do. So we went with this other project, Git-T, which is much easier.
Easier.
Yeah, and it's great. It actually, I like the interface a lot better too. Honestly, it's more GitHub-esque. It's very slimmed down, and yeah, it's a great project. There's another a sister project that's a fork of it called Forgeo or something like that. It's Forgejo. So that they're basically the same. So basically, you can use either of those backends once I have this thing pushed out. So that should open up a couple more opportunities for backends. Obviously, GitHub would be the ideal backend that we'll add at some point, but they have some limitations on how they do authentication at the moment. So that's kind of challenging. So I'm probably going to hold off for them, and I'll probably do. My plan is get this Git-T Forjo out there, and then I'll probably do Bitbucket after that, which is another. It's an Atlassian product that's kind of similar to GitLab. And then you'll have a variety of backends. Ideally, GitHub's the one we really, really want, obviously, because it has like 90% market share. It's just they really are. They don't have Pixie authentication yet, and I've been pushing them to do it by putting it in their community posts. And a lot of people seem to be interested, but just there's been no movement, and it's been like 3 or 4 years since I posted that. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I hope it does.
See.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good. So with just around hosting it yourself, so you just got to put it in onto a managed like host, like Cloudflare or whatever, and then just go this is my instance, and then sort of configure it, and then you can then sort of like you said, just probably add accounts, and then of course within an account or within a project, like you do with GitLab, you can then manage users and do the same sorts of things. Yeah,
it's great. So we have it on a pretty small server on DigitalOcean right now. And so it's very easy to host. So basically, you set up. Not to get too in the weeds, because I'll probably make a video on this on some point, Ben, because I think it could be really useful. But you basically, it's a binary. It's a Go project, so you download a binary. You can use a different database backend, so you could use SQLite or MySQL. And then you basically run it as like a systemd service on your computer, and it's pretty cheap and easy to run a Git-T instance. I highly recommend people who are hitting up against user limitations look into it. And then they have configuration files, so you can say, what kind of things you want enabled or not, and that stuff takes a little bit of time to learn. But they have a really great like cheat sheet to show what options are available. And so I think at some point I might make a video just showing how to get this spun up, so people know, and you could use it as a reference, and then you could use it for Plenti sites if you wanted to do something like that.
I think that would be great.
Yeah, and someone like you, Ben, who has a lot of sites, like at some point you might want to just migrate all your, if you have a use case for it, you could migrate all your clients over to your own hosted solution and whatever. I mean, that's one option you always have if you
over. Yeah, that'd be good. Or just even get to a point where looking into the future, I'm going to start and do something with it, and then you could maybe from there put clients on it. You know what I'm saying? So like you could at least sort of manage it that way if it was. But yeah, that would be really good. Because I'm all for like if you can try and manage that yourself, or just if it's not too complicated and that you can that would be really good, just being able to have a bit more control over that side of it too. But that's fantastic if you could put that sort of get that going and put something together. Great.
And I definitely recommend still doing some GitLab stuff. So if we still have sites on GitLab, because if we have only a few users, why not use someone else's infrastructure? They do backups, they do all this.
Exactly.
And like you get rid of all those headaches, right? And it's free. But once you get that limit, then I would start thinking about switching over for that stuff. But it's on my list. It's like this. I kind of have this like never-ending to-do list. It's like, do I do content on this, or do I finish the Git-T integration? There's so many things. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. I'm in the middle of the Git-T stuff of pushing that out, so it's at least available to use, because right now it's not even in the project. Right, we're using it for our sites because we just did a custom. We ejected the core stuff and we did it custom, and now I'm trying to suss that out and pull it back into the project so it's available for everybody.
Yeah, I see. Okay, Cool. Yeah. So, and talking about that with just that latest post on work hosting on Cloudflare,
Hmm.
that was really cool. Like
Yeah,
I thought, so I was just thinking, instead of hosting the site on GitLab, just do it, and then managing, so host on GitLab and then managing the DNS stuff on Cloudflare. Just why don't we just host the whole thing,
sure.
host it, and then manage it over there? I mean, it and it worked, and it works fine.
That's great.
So, because I mean, I really like Cloudflare. I don't know, just because of their CDN and their securities. I don't know. It seems to be, and they, and look, with Cloudflare pages, they're a bit like Netlify, in that they'll just allow you to do as many static sites sort of
Yeah,
for free. Like, basically, it's like,
yeah,
and I'm thinking, wow, that's really cool. That it's very lightweight. I mean, I don't know. And every time I launch a site and through Cloudflare, and it's sort of proxied through their servers, there's like, I'm getting like the actual speed, the page speed is just way better than anything else
sure.
that I've looked at, like even from Netlify or something.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
and that's just based on their infrastructure, or
sure.
the way they're serving and stuff. I don't know. Like, it could be the same site, but it's just like, what, it's very different.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that so it kind of, you highlighted a really important point that I think I've done a poor job of communicating, is that at the end of the day, these things are just static assets. Like your whole
That's
site
that's,
is
that's right.
flat files. So you can put them almost anywhere. You could put them on Cloudflare. You could put them on GitLab pages, GitHub pages. You could put them
Mm,
on Dropbox. I think you can even like serve things off like Dropbox, and even and maybe even like Google Drive. Again,
drive.
I'm
Yeah.
not exactly sure. I've heard people have done this, but I haven't done that myself. I'm not sure if that's really
Mm,
that feasible. But at the end of the day, they're flat files. So the CMS integration side of things, like for the CMS to work, you need
mm,
authentication through OAuth, right, to log in somewhere.
mm,
You need an API to write those things back, and then you need CI/CD to build and deploy somewhere. But as long as you're doing that with a supported solution right now, GitLab, eventually it'll be
mm,
Git, then you can really deploy the site wherever you want. And so
mm,
it opens up a lot of possibilities for folks. And I think it's really great that you went and did that with Cloudflare. I think that's really
mm,
like a perfect use case for that. I think a lot of people would want to do something like that.
mm. Yeah, yeah, and that's good, because I mean, for me, I was thinking more around that, like, you that idea of, well, firstly, putting all your eggs into one platform, or, but and that if that doesn't work or something happens, what do
Yep,
you do? So
exactly.
just having some options around hosting, and that is really good. And like you're doing with the back end stuff, and having options there. Well, of course, it's not, it just opens up possibilities, or just options, I mean, for the back end. So, um which is really good. That's all. I just think
Yeah.
it's good. So, yeah, yeah. And then, yeah, um, yeah. What was I thinking? Yeah. So that, no, no, it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's important too. We definitely don't want to be
Yeah,
pigeonholed into like one
yeah.
platform. Like GitLab's great because it's open source, and they have great free
Mm.
options and stuff. So I think it was a good first choice, especially because they had Pixie and things that we needed.
That's
But
right.
we don't
Yeah.
want to be locked into just them, right? Like the idea was never that this
Mm.
is a GitLab only project.
Project. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I want to make sure there's other options. And I was even talking with Steve, the guy that works with me on all of this stuff. Of potentially the options of even like extending Pocket Base or other solutions that could
Yes.
essentially act as this same kind of intermediary. And I think there's a lot of options that maybe we can explore that aren't just like the typical Git hosts that we could potentially look in at the future or two. Again, it's one thing at
Right.
a time though. We're going to try to hit the major Git host players. I think that's the most reasonable one because everyone's using them in their workflows already, and
Mm.
maybe we can expand the options from there. So that would
Mm.
be an exciting thing to explore in the future. But again, trying to hit the high priority stuff first, and not
Mm.
get too far ahead of myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah. I think for me, the next the step after, well, building some more sort of just normal, I mean, straightforward sites would be to try and get into learning a little bit about if I'm sure I'm going to get asked for some type of e-commerce sort of site, where someone's going to say, I want to sell something, and I understand how with Plenti, I mean, it's really nice. It's a bit like how you can have, you have your content type and then you have all your products or whatever. And it's really nice way to manage anything like that. It's just like a blog. It
Yeah.
just works the same way. But yeah, just then going, okay, now you want to integrate, if you were to manage that content in your Plenti project and not do it necessarily externally,
Mm-hmm.
but how, it's thinking about the integration of a payment sort of gateway that would be maybe linking into I'm thinking of, what's the big one? Just
Stripe.
Stripe, yeah, or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, where and but they also offer a few different solution ways you can do that. Have a product ID
Yep.
that then could actually match an ID that you might have in your project or something
Yeah.
that you try and link together, and
Yep.
then it might be a little API. I'm not sure how it would work, but where you could just go, okay, whatever's happening with the local, with your file, with your your product, that gets reflected or something, and
Yeah.
you can manage it a bit. Like, I don't know, but anyway, it might be a bit hard to set up. But
Yeah.
anyway, I there's something to just looking ahead, that might be something I'd have to look at. You've probably done that with Pocket Base, right?
Yeah. So yeah,
Or something,
I've been thinking a lot about this. So yeah, we've done a few sites that do commerce functionality through Pocket Base, but it was very custom. So we were building our own hooks and endpoints and things like that, and it
endpoints,
was
and
very
yeah,
very
yeah.
custom, and it wasn't something that's easily shareable with other folks. So I've been doing a lot of thinking on this, and so the one approach is you use something like Medusa. I don't know if you've ever come across that. It's like
I've heard of it.
yeah. The problem with that is, so to me it's
Mm.
the way that, again, I'm not an expert in it, but I looked at it like way back when they were pre-release actually. But
Building,
they were like,
yes.
the idea is like you have this dashboard that you create your products and you set your prices and discounts or whatever, and then you integrate it through an API with your site. But it seems duplicative, and I want Plenti to
Mm.
be the engine, like just the simple content engine that powers these
Engine.
things. So something we've been working on actually, Steve was doing a lot of early work on this, and we have so many competing priorities that we've since kind of put it as a slight pause, and we've moved on to some other things, but it's still there's still been a pretty good headway on it. But essentially, we took the concept of Go Commerce, which is an old Netlify project, basically that allows you to
Oh,
do commerce through static sites. And the at the end of the day, the real power that happens here is that essentially you can define your content source in your static site, like so you can make products
mhm,
through like Plenti interface,
mhm,
and then it has metadata on those products. And basically, what happens is when you check out, it goes to a checkout endpoint that's in GoCommerce, and then GoCommerce goes and crawls your site to ensure that that code was not tampered with when it was sent over. Because essentially, someone could change your front end code to be like, $100 product they
mhm.
could put for $1 and they could check out. And the fear is
Oh,
that
I
people
see.
are cheating your site, and that's one of the big challenges with static sites. But the way that GoCommerce worked is once someone did that checkout process, it would go back and it would crawl your site at the source, find the metadata, ensure that the checkout experience is what the person is saying it is.
Mm,
So we started building a version of that ourselves that works a little bit more independently. So that the GoCommerce project, first of all, is not very maintained, and it
mhm.
requires a lot of these other services like GoTrue, their authentication service, and these other things to be integrated. We wanted something that works a little more out of the box. So, of course, you know how I'm a fan of Pocket Base. We ended up extending.
Yes.
We were trying to build these plugins to extend Pocket Base to do these things that we need, and so we started to the process of doing that. So there,
It would
I'm
be a
hoping,
plugin for Pocket Base,
yeah. So
like
you'll
a
have to run a
Go
Pocket
Pocket or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You'll have to run a Pocket Base instance, or
Mm,
we're thinking maybe someday we might offer this as a product too.
mhm,
But essentially, what you'll be able to do in the future is if
mhm,
this reaches fruition, is that you will be able to just like you write a blog page in Plenti right now, you'll be able to write a product page, and then you'll have a
Oh,
checkout
I
experience
see.
with simply doing that. You won't have to start up another system or
So
run it.
it's some more. Oh,
Yep.
okay. Wow, that would be
So
really awesome.
that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping people will feel really empowered to just be like, oh, I'm just making content the way I made content every other way, and now I can check out and make payments and things like that. So that's my hope.
Mm.
Again, it's another one of those things. Like, where does it fit in the priority list? I'm not sure. I think there's maybe a few bigger fish to fry in the short term to make
In
things better, but
but
it's definitely something I think that's very important. So yeah,
mm, good.
yeah, I know. Because I know I feel like you would use it. I want to use it in my products too. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely on the radar. As soon as I have something interesting to share there, I'll start to do it.
yeah. Yes. Yeah, yeah. That would be good. Hmm. Okay, good to know about anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
It's
you got it there
yeah,
on the radar.
we've
Mm.
already put a lot of work into it, to be
Mm.
honest. So
Okay.
there's been a few weeks of work put into the product. So
Oh, okay.
it's not just like the very beginning, but it's still, there's a lot to consider. So it's not
Mm.
ready for prime time either.
Yeah, okay. Cool, cool. What's the time? Looking half 7:30. What's that? 4:30 for you? Something? Yeah.
Yeah, 3:36. Yep.
6:30. Oh, 3. Okay. Bit earlier today. Um, I sort of the only really other question, Jim, I had was, I mean, it's a little bit of a, I might have mentioned it last time, a technical one
Hmm.
around getting the, in a nested nav, with the allies, the
Hmm.
UIs and the allies, you got
Yep.
a nested sort of nav situation. At the the top level, like we talked about, and I've been, we implemented sort of that idea where you, with the content um prop, you can track or keep a track of the current of an active nav
Yes.
item.
Yep.
um and I sort of still had trouble trying to work it out for this site, and I
Right.
just thought, oh, it was only a really small thing, in the end, because it's like, okay, but just a niggly thing, like the single nav items, they go get the I can work out them to get the active state,
Uh-huh.
active class, but and when I go to any of those other ones, the
Uh-huh.
nested ones, I don't get. And
Oh,
I was
interesting.
just thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, just that was all.
So odds
Yeah,
are there's a very slight variation between what you're trying to match. Like either it's missing a
yes.
forward slash or it's probably very slight. And so I'll typically,
Mm.
I'm a developer who do the console log a fair amount in JavaScript,
Oh, okay.
console.log, and
Yeah,
I'll try to
yeah.
see like what is the link item that. So just for other people's context, I know you're aware of this, but the
Mm,
content object is this magic prop that exists in Plenty, and
mm.
basically whatever page you're on, the current routed page type is
Page, yeah.
the current content, right? So like if you go from the
Mm,
about page to the contact page, if you had those on your site, you'd get the
mm,
content values for that, and it changes, right? So what you're doing is you're trying to put a highlighted indication on a link in your navigation to say, I'm on the about page. And you want to be able to do something where if someone were to reload or come in from like Google to the about page, you still want it to
mm,
be highlighted. So what you're doing is you're using that content prop to say, is this the path for the about page? If so, then highlight it.
mm.
Um, for the nested stuff, it's probably something like either you're using a base URL or there's I bet it's not matching might be the issue. But I can
Issue.
certainly look at it, Ben. Feel free to flag it to me, and I can take a look in your repo if it's helpful.
Yeah,
But
okay.
it might just be a matching thing where it's not quite matching
Matching.
up.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I also
Yeah.
I did change something recently there. So I think you've seen this. So now there's like
Mhm.
the add content section is different to actually list out the content now. In order
Okay.
to do that, I sometimes I wasn't sure when we generate those content paths if we should start with a forward
Mm.
slash or not. And I basically
Yes.
determined is if you don't have a base URL, then we should probably start with the forward slash. And if you do have a base URL, we should probably not start with it. And this all comes
Mm.
down to whether your website is served off of like a subfolder or not.
Yes.
It's so funny. This little feature, has added a lot of complication to
Bless you.
using Plenti. And I think it's useful, but it's almost like I'm not sure it's even worth the weight of the
Mm,
complication. That I think it screws up people a lot.
like,
Um, like it's not hard from
yeah, yeah.
from my perspective of build. It's not that hard technically to implement, but the nuance is weird enough where I worry that it's like unnecessarily confusing people. But it also allows you to
Mm,
serve off a subfolder which somebody might need. So I don't know. I'm torn on that feature, and maybe there's a better way to do it in the future. But that for now, that's kind of where we've drawn the line. But yeah,
mm.
I don't know.
Mm.
I feel like is that something that you've run into before? Like the base URL stuff's kind of confusing a little bit.
Yes, it is a bit, but because like and well, just in the okay, I use the same template now. I have the base URL
Yeah,
set. I'll just go to my
sure.
cut this project just to have a look. Yeah, so the base is set with a backslash
Yep.
now or forward slash.
Yeah.
Um, but then and so like when you so in your project, you know, when I mean, so think about it when you're navigating around, and this would happen to this site,
Yeah.
you know, it does, you know, you go to a page and then it doesn't have the on the whatever URL you are on, it
Mhm.
doesn't have the slash, but then you refresh the page and then the slash gets added to the
So yeah,
URL.
those are two different things actually. So this is another So the base URL. Well, I'll address the second thing first. So the
Yeah.
forward slash basically every static page on the site
Mhm.
is actually the name of that. It's actually a folder name, and inside that there's an index.html file. So
Yes.
if you go to an about page on like a static site, it'll be like mysite.com forward slash about. But what it really is,
About
it's an
is
about folder and then index.html, and that's what the
HTML
actual page is.
pages.
And
Yes.
so what happens is that forward slash is there to kind of indicate that when you first reload, it's like it's your static route because
Yes.
it's just looking for the static HTML first and it puts that forward slash. But if you start routing, we allow for pretty URLs that make it look like that's not happening, and we
They're
still will route
happening.
you. Yeah, because we route on the front end,
Mm,
and instead of making a hard decision of going one way or another, I kind of just let both happen, and I'm not sure that's the
happening.
right call either. Um, so yeah, that is
Mm,
a little bit of it's a little bit of a weird thing, right? And sometimes if you're not careful and you don't
yes.
kind of account for that in your SEO, you'll get duplicate content, and that's something to
Can
be worried about
yes,
too. So
yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
um,
I've seen that duplicate content
yeah.
in there. Yeah.
So it's again, and these are like so I have had points in Plenti's history where we forced one or the other, and we could
Yes.
do that again. And maybe that is the right call to do for now. And that might be something that I do consider. But I've been having these existential questions about like, is this the right? Okay, so we have all these static HTML pages that build out the site, and then we hydrate the whole app into this thing that navigates client side only.
Mhm.
And then if you reload it, it goes back to the static file, so it's there. But I'm wondering more and more. I think about this. It's like as I also think about what's the best way to template things in a sustainable, reactive way. And I'm wondering if building everything into a single page app is even the right call, or if we're adding a lot of complication to it that we don't need to begin with. So I don't know. I'm not. I don't have great answers for these things because there's so many moving
What's
parts.
the alternative then if you don't build it into a static site like that? You have a backend, you have it all back
So
hide
it'd be like cutting out half of what Plenti's doing right
doing.
now. So like Hugo, for instance, Hugo's a project that does not
Mm,
you can probably force it to do it, but it does not typically hydrate into a single page app. It is just static
mm,
files. It produces these static HTML, CSS files that sit on a server, and then your web server just
mm,
navigates to them, right? So
mm.
every page you go to is a hard refresh. But what we do is we give you that plus we hydrate it. And so when you start
Yes,
navigating, your browser doesn't even do a hard refresh.
fresh.
We're behind
Yes,
the
that's
scenes. We're
quick.
putting the
Yes.
content and the templates there, and we're just shifting those around.
So yeah, I see.
But if you do reload, we give you the static page, and then it hydrates again. So every time you do a hard reload, it goes to the static file and then
So
hydrates. Yeah, it's very weird. And so I guess the advantages are that it feels very fast. Your sites
it
probably
is
feel
very
very
fast.
fast. Yeah.
Oh yes, it is. Yeah, compared to some others, I can see even what is it 11T or I've seen other sites and they sort of like you
Yep.
go to a page and it's like you know you wait it's like you wait
Yep.
just a little just that little bit you know
Yeah.
between pages or routes. Yeah.
Yeah, and Plenti's probably like one of the yeah, it's pretty snappy for that kind of stuff. So that's it's nice that it does that. It's also nice because we do this interactive CMS, obviously that has like you can go across pages and do different things, and so
Mm.
having that all into like a hydrated single page app is kind of nice. And I'm unsure of how that experience will feel if we do force to reload that and do that everything on the single like each individual page. I'm
Mm.
not sure
Page.
because right now you can do things like you could presumably load like a let's say a PDF or a
Mm.
picture into your media library, and then you could switch pages and reference that loaded page in there. But if you're doing hard refreshes, you kind of start losing reference to these things, right? And that becomes a
Yeah.
little more
So,
challenging. So for complicated CMS interactions, the single page application potentially has advantages too. So,
me too.
but it has complications, right? So if you have broken JavaScript, it like does weird things where it breaks your site or these duplicate page things. So I don't know. Again, these are these tough questions to
Mm.
answer, and I'm not sure I have the great answer for it. I want the
Mm.
easiest, most consistent experience possible, but I also don't want to lose some of these things that are nice, like fast pages and interactive
Actually, yeah,
CMS. Yeah.
definitely.
So
Mm. Mm. Yeah, so that might be, yeah. Don't do anything too rash, like too quickly on
yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
exactly. I think I need to experiment with this stuff a lot more, and like I want to make sure the trade-offs are worth it.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Mm. And then, the other, I guess the other question was about that other sort of bigger goal of maybe moving. Well, I just know because the Svelte 5 is out now.
Yeah, yep,
Plenti's still on version 3.54
3. Yeah,
or something, like it's not 4. So
yep,
even if you were wanting to get up to speed with the Svelte version 5, you'd
yeah,
have to migrate to 4 before you then went to
yeah,
5. Like it would be like that would be a huge undertaking in itself anyway. Well, I mean,
yeah,
not huge. I mean, they do have backward compatibility. I think you can still have, be using some of the older Svelte syntax in the version 5. I know
yeah,
that they accept that.
yeah,
Like for the export and those other sort of things that they've changed
yeah.
in the actual. But anyway, I was just thinking about all of that too. That because you were sort of wanting to move away from
Well,
from
I'm
but
torn. I'm very
yeah,
torn on this because
yeah.
I like Svelte, and I think there's. I mean, having a project that has a lot of steam going for it, like that helps our project for sure.
Mm.
Svelte's much more popular than Plenti is as a whole, right? So like having those things that they help us in that way. Um, and I
Mm.
think you're right. I don't think the syntax is so drastically different that Svelte 5 is any major change in terms of like
Mm.
it's impossible to migrate. The challenge is right now we're doing a lot of really weird things to make Svelte 3 work. So
Three
we're
work.
like loading everything into this V8 context, and then we're massaging out plate. So
Mm.
the Svelte compiler has a lot of things that don't work in a V8 context. We actually massage that stuff
Mm.
out manually, and then we also do weird things where we like take all your components, we convert them to component signatures, and we reference it. So we're like kind
Okay.
of doing a tremendous amount of work to make things
Work.
work like this now. And then even Svelte 4, it's like, well, the package structure changes and these things change. And so it's like, it's not an easy task. Like I'm not against doing it, but it's kind of a gargantuan task to actually change all these like little nuanced things to work with these new versions of Svelte. And so it's really hard to do that.
Mm.
And then not only is it hard, but like we have these weird memory leak things that happen with very large
Mm.
sites, and like panics, and I feel like I'm kind of at this point now where it's like I can't tell if I'm chasing my tail more to make this work than just have a solution that's felt like don't get me wrong, I don't want to move away from the
Mm.
concept of
Mm.
Svelte. I think it's a really good Svelte. I'm sorry, a really good like paradigm. Like I want whatever we
Mm.
build to be like Svelte in a lot of ways. If we end up going down that road, um, I just think that
Mm.
we're massaging out a lot of things that are like a lot of work to make Svelte work. And then every time, even like a minor version changes Svelte, we have to go in there and like surgically make it work, which is challenging. And I think people
Mm.
sometimes expect that it works like a
Mm.
normal node project, and it really doesn't. And that's a challenge.
Yeah,
Um,
I see.
the other thing
Mm.
is, so I actually
Mm.
recently I was fixing an issue in Plentigo, Ben, that was related to like some binary compilation things. So we're using CGO, which is basically an extension of Go to work with C in order to use V8 in our
Okay.
system. It makes builds. It's the reason we don't have Windows. It's the it's the reason sometimes I spent a few days just upgrading. We have a separate project in our repo called OSX Cross Target, and that basically
Mhm.
allows you to build Mac and Linux binaries. It's a project that I'm
Oh, I
maintaining
see.
that like I don't even like. It's a whole thing that I have to worry about with like libc and all these different things that are
Oh,
complicated.
I
That
see.
again, like if we moved away from this and we went to a pure Go solution, I think we would honestly cut the Plenti code base down by like 50% by getting rid of all that stuff. And we could
Oh,
start
really?
fresh from like a smaller footprint. The problem is building Svelte is not an easy task. And so, again, I've done some experimentation with an
Mm.
idea. Um, it's very far from being fully fleshed out. I think I have to understand the concept a little deeper before I make a decision one way or another. So unfortunately
Mm.
for now, I agree. Sitting in this Svelte 3, like not sure where to go, is not the ideal spot for the project. I don't have the ultimate answer yet, but
Answer, yeah.
it's something that's on my
Mm.
mind a lot. Yeah, because I do want a very consistent path. And if there is a path forward to Svelte 5, I'm not against it. I'm not convinced yet. I'm not sure the right answer. Um,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, particularly if you got all those other sort of, and on the ongoing sort of, I don't know, what you call it, overheads or maintenance, the way you just manage it all. It's if it's, it just might not be worth it. It's hard, isn't it? Because then if you're building something else from scratch,
which is
going
maintenance. Yeah,
and
it's
then that's a huge undertaking in itself. But yeah, gosh.
so I'm trying to think of like
Anyway,
what is the most probably building the new thing is more effort in a way, but it might be less maintenance because so we have
yes,
so many fragile things right now, like things that are slow and fragile that are very hard to overcome in the current way we're doing things. And so I could see a world where, a site that takes 30 seconds to build in Plenti now in the future could take a half a second, right? So like I think there could be some
mm,
huge performance gains and all these things with like, sometimes when you're doing a lot of saves, like the thing kind of blows up.
mm,
Like those, I think we could resolve a lot of those things if we did go a different route. Again, it's the kind of thing where I'm cautious about how much work that is. I built a prototype that's really kind of rough still, but it does it scopes CSS and it does a lot of things that are kind of nice. So I built a
okay,
very rough prototype that does something. I would say it's like 2% of the way that we need it to be, and it'd have to be rewritten to be a little. So yeah, it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
it's not, but it was. I was surprised how fast I got to where I got with
You got
experimenting. So that made me hopeful. And then we just been inundated with other work. So
other
I haven't
stuff.
touched it in a few months, but I do want to go
Mm,
back to it. And
mm.
uh, Steve is actually quite good at writing parsers and lexers and things like that. So that would be really. So he's kind of has a good base knowledge for potentially building something in that regard too. So it's something we might explore. Again, I think we've named probably 5 big things on this call that we could explore, right? And it's like these things would take a long time to flesh out. So that's the challenge. Oh
Time to, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Oh well. Anyway, that's yeah. I guess though it is something that would still like potentially have to be resolved. I just mean at some point.
yeah,
Well, I mean, I guess like I mean, I'm sure code, but you could still keep the status quo for as long as it's
yeah,
not gonna be a problem. I mean, of course, like
yeah,
in real terms, but of course, if you wanted to really evolve and go, okay, then eventually you need to look at it and yeah,
yeah. I agree. I feel
work
like we're
on
being held
something.
held back a little bit right now by just kind of staying in this limbo. So the plan is to okay. The way that I want to do is I want the current iteration of Plenti to be the best it can be as it is. So people who don't
Mm.
want to go the whatever new direction we go, they can have
Yes.
a functional thing that they can be happy with. Um, and so I want to iron out a couple bugs before I even like do that. Think about that real cut. But I do think that the long term vision of Plenti is something that is a little faster, more stable, and a little more maintainable. So I do
Mm.
envision this happening at some point. I guess it just
Mm.
when does that process start in earnest? It's hard to say. I have a
To
lot of
say,
irons in the fire, and I think I need to be a little better about kind of narrowing that focus on the things that
now
we really need to
focus.
do. But yeah,
Yeah.
like so,
Yeah.
for instance, I want to get the backends that we talked about. I want to get Git and
Yeah.
maybe Bitbucket, a couple of, in the current iteration, so people who are happy with, they can use it in this current iteration. But I think the future will be a little different. And the last thing I'll just say
Mm.
on that is that I don't picture this being a huge upgrade process for you. So like if you built your site with Plenti now, my hope is that there'll be a couple syntax changes, but you could take your existing Plenti site and use it with the new system without having to feel like you're rewriting this thing from scratch. I don't want it to be that drastically different. It's going to work a
Mm.
little bit different, but the idea of the content and the layouts and the control
Mm.
structures should feel very similar, and the
Similar. Yeah.
CMS should all be similar. So I don't feel like you're throwing out everything you've done before. Hopefully it's like, okay, instead of, hashtag if, it now just says if, right? So like those things will be a little bit different,
Mm.
but I'm just hoping that, it's the type of thing that like once we get
Mm.
there, which is a long way away, I can go back and look at my old themes and like, take a day or two and upgrade those, each maybe a day or two. So I'm hoping it's not like a huge thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 Like not a complete
Okay.
rewrite. I don't want that. I don't want everyone to feel like they're completely rewriting stuff from scratch. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. And hopefully, to any of those, even you have the option to go, well, those older existing sites that you didn't want to necessarily
Just
upgrade,
lock
or
them.
there's no need, you just go keep it as is.
100%.
And then that you could still work with that version. So basically, you would be sort of bit like forking. Okay, this is where we draw the line in the sand, and
Yep.
we fork off another project. Like, you know what I mean? Or you start
100%.
another project in a sense, because you want to be able to maintain the current site in its form. Like, if there's no
Exactly.
need, I'm saying there's no need to really do
You
any
don't
of
have
that
to. Yeah.
change. You don't have to.
Because certain clients aren't going to want to upgrade, right? Yeah. So the idea is you would just lock your CI at the
High,
last
yeah,
version that uses Svelte 3, and then that
yes.
site would just continue running. And honestly, so that what we talked about in the beginning, that Plenty version manager, what
Yes,
you do
that
there
would
is you could
be
then use that to start up different. So like if you have an old site and you need to change something on it, you could start up and it would use the old version of Plenty, and you could work along merrily. And then you go to a brand new site and it could start up a brand new version of Plenty, and you could work on that too. And the templates would be different. They would both work. So that's kind of the hope behind something like that. If that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, that would be really useful, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I hope. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Sounds like lots of work there,
Yeah.
Jim.
Lots of work. I know.
Lots of
I
plans.
know. Yeah. I don't know. It's this,
Mm,
I, it's an itch I really
mm,
want to scratch. Like, I don't see this as being a big, like, it's hard for me to imagine it being a huge moneymaker or anything like that. But I really feel like there is a need in the marketplace for
mm,
a web application framework that is doing what Plenti's doing. And I don't think anyone's cared. Like,
mm,
I think we've taken it farther than anyone else has taken it in terms of like building this thing out. But it's not where I want it to be. I have a vision of a much better experience on the road. There's so many things. Like, for
mm.
instance, the CMS, I want to have really well-defined class names in there. So essentially what you could do is you could drop in a single CSS file to style the CMS in different ways. And so you could
Ways,
basically
yeah.
download themes for your CMS. You could like the dark theme or the rounded corner theme or
Oh, I
the
see.
shadow theme. Like you could do all sorts of things. And so like, I don't think that'd be super hard because we have a very low specificity to our CSS for our CMS. And essentially you
Mm-hmm.
could add like a single file like admin.css to your project, and that should style your theme, your
Wow.
CMS.
Yeah,
But right now it's
CMS.
kind of difficult because our class names aren't very well structured. So there's a lot of little things like that I think could be better. But yeah, I have this
Mm,
vision. I want Plentico to be the easiest way to build a website. Like I really want it just to be the simplest thing you could possibly do, the most consistent
mm,
and simple way you could build a website. And until I feel like we've hit the nail on the head, I'm going to keep forging on and hopefully, with help from people like you, Ben, like I'm optimistic that we'll just keep
mm.
making improvements. That's all we can do.
Improvements.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to get better
Mm.
every month. Hopefully we're making some small improvement.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm definitely yeah, committed and sort of what's the word, just into the platform, of course, like I really like the structures, the way I'm really familiar now with the way it all works, and I like it. I like this the way it all functions, and it's very intuitive and well sort of thought through, that whole the data source and the template and how it all works together, and all that. It's really, really nice, so
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that feedback, and I also I think it's really cool that you've taken the time to like
uh,
kind of come in and explore, because I know a lot of this stuff exists more in my head than it does in documentation and whatever. So I think it's really cool that you took the
mhm.
time to dive
I'm
in,
starting to get
explore.
into your head.
Yeah, I know.
Is that
Yeah,
what you
watch out. It might be a little, yeah, a little scary up there. No, but I think
I
it's
know,
really
it's
cool
good.
that
Yeah.
yeah, I think it takes
Mm,
a brave person
mm,
to find a young project and like really immerse
mm,
themselves in it and try to figure it out. Even though sometimes the
mm.
documentation, I think our documentation probably covers like 80% of what the system does. There's a lot of features that are kind of hidden because
Easy.
I built them and I
Mm.
never documented them. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's great that you're doing that. I think it's I
Mm,
appreciate all the stuff that you've done participating in the
yeah.
project too. So
But and that's all good. Yeah, just quickly, I was just going to say too that, it's so easy to extend or do things with, like, now, even in Plenty. Like, for example, I with this last site, I experimented with pulling in, processing the images with a Sharp library. I don't know if you
oh
know
cool.
Sharp.
Hmm.
Um, um, but basically it was really nice in that you can just it's just it well so it's in a it's like a pre-processing. You just Okay, I had the site built,
Hmm.
um and then it's like, okay, so I want to, well, dot, JPEGs or whatever,
Hmm.
and I want to make them, web p, more sort of
Yeah.
modern lightweight sort of image files. And so you just sort of run the script. It converts. So I had to, converts all of the images in specified the images folder. So
Hmm.
the media,
Yeah. Yeah.
folder and
Uh-huh.
images. But what I did was had the output going into the static images. So it was like I was using the static file
Hmm.
in that process, just a place to put them. I mean, I guess you could
Sure.
have put it in put any file, but anyway, it was good, and it worked perfectly. And then I had another step where you run the next script to then go through the index all of the data source files and replace the JPEG extensions with WebP. So
Hmm.
when and found all of those points, those source files, those
Yeah.
source or URLs, and just replace them. So because that was the other big challenge when you had hundreds and hundreds of
Sure.
images,
Yeah.
to do that manually. But so that just I just ran that process at the end of the build,
Yep.
and then just move that folder over, and it just worked. And I think I only had one. I think it was might have been in the only issue was maybe one you might have missed. I might have not done configured, or it might have missed, but it was pretty good to just go, okay, well, here's a whole site that I've just converted into an optimized image sort of. So that worked really.
That.
So I mean, what I'm saying, it's not an integrated thing where you just, on a build, it does any of this. No, you had to just sort of just run the script sort of
Yeah.
thing, at the end, or in one go.
Sure.
So, but I thought that was not a bad way to manage it anyway. In the end, it
Yeah.
seemed to work fine, and especially when there was so many images, I wasn't going to go back in image by image and then convert them manually, because that was
Sure.
just going to take too long.
Yeah. No,
But
that's.
but yeah, it's completely separate to the build of Plenty, and you know what I mean, because
Yeah.
it's just a script that just uses that library to do those processes. I mean the processing. So yeah, I mean, that was really nice to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. I might have to pick your brain on that.
It's
We'll
8 o'clock.
we can
Yeah.
hop off. But so I think that I
Mm.
want to basically, when you upload images, I'd like to be able to scale, crop, and convert to WebP or other formats. So I think that'd be really cool to have that as a part of the CMS. Anyways, I'll have to pick your brain on that at some point. Again, it's like where does that fit in the feature list? I'm not sure, but it's something that I've thought about doing. So yeah, that's really cool that you got it working.
Yeah. So it's actually it's included in the SAS project. It's just, I've just got it in there's 2 JavaScripts for files. It's called build scripts file directory, but they're just 2 processes. It does one does the image processing, and then one does the JSON extension conversion.
Yeah, very cool.
Which is nice.
Yeah, nice. I'll take a look at it.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Well, maybe
cut it here.
I could leave it to it, Jim, and